Quite simply, friends, it's the Latin Mass that matters. But it's not just the Latin Mass. This is a really key point. The globalists, including the one who was in charge in Rome until very recently, God rest his soul, the globalists are intent on dismantling something else. They want to dismantle the global network of counter-revolutionary cells, no matter what it is. Some people say it's the folks who do Second Amendment rights. Some people say it's the homeschool movement. Some people say it's the back to the land. All of these are little cells, counter-revolutionary cells that need to be taken out by the globalists. And one of those very crucial cells is the traditional Catholic cell, the communities all around the world. Little counter-revolutionary cell that's sprung up around the Latin Mass all around the world. Now, we used to call those your local parish, obviously. Well, today they're called Latin Mass communities, these cells. But it's the same thing. It's just that the faithful have to drive a lot further every Sunday to get to those parishes, those communities that came about now because of the traditional Latin Mass being available throughout the church. Now, here's the thing. Latin Mass communities, or cells, are what? They're self-sufficient, and that's the problem. So if you look at their websites, for example, I looked at the other day at the website for the Fraternity of St. Peter's Church here locally in Minneapolis, All Saints Church. Came in, the church, same old story happening all around the world. Fraternity came in, the church had been slated to be shuttered, to be closed. They came in within a few months. They had packed out masses. Within a few years, they had rebuilt, the parish center. Everything's booming over there, right? You look at their website now, and you see that there's these ads for everything you can possibly think of that you might need in terms of goods and services in the parish. Craftsmen, teachers, engineers, construction workers, nannies, carpenters, plumbers, doctors, lawyers, everything, right? All these traditional Catholics exchanging goods for services, just as it had been done in the old days, which makes the cell completely independent. This is happening in traditional Latin Mass communities all over the world. Makes them completely free and independent of any dependence on whom? On Big Brother or the nanny state. And that's the problem. And now modernists looking at that, what are modernists? Modernists are just globalists in Roman collars most of the time. Well, they don't like that. Why not? Because globalism is all about control. And a self-sufficient Latin Mass community is all about being self-reliant. So the two are mutually exclusive. And that's what the problem is. It's not just the Mass. It's not just Latin. So look at what happened, for example, during COVID, when those Latin Mass cells were pretty much the only people in the world going to Mass in a world that was full at that time of closed churches and ridiculously masked up priests, ridiculously masked up bishops, and ridiculously masked up popes. And this, friends, I think is what caused Pope Francis to get so concerned about the Latin Mass. This is what happened when he sort of showed his globalist handlers that he could not deliver us, that he could not hand us over to them. And you'll remember what it looked like.
And there is no weather, and there is no force or principality in heaven and on earth that can stop us from offering the sacrifice of the Mass.
Literally now, we were told to obey. They locked our churches, and we simply continued in the parking lot to go to the traditional Latin Mass, right? And very soon thereafter, the war on the Latin Mass communities reached even the halls of government and law enforcement agencies that were really, really pretty powerful.
The FBI field office in Richmond on the 23rd of January of this year issued a memorandum in which they advocated for, and I quote, the exploration of new avenues for tripwire and source development against traditionalist Catholics, it's their language, including those who favor the Latin Mass.
And people get upset with the FBI. Do I blame the FBI first and foremost for that? No, I don't. Because it was the Vatican's work. The Vatican's responsible for that. Do you remember how the late Pope never missed an opportunity to call us all rigid extremists? Well, what does a rigid extremist do? A rigid extremist, a loner, right? People who break from the pack. What are they? They're dangerous, don't you see? The Pope was telling the world that traditional Catholics are essentially dangerous. Be careful. These guys are really extreme, man. It was the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, getting that message out. What was he doing? He was isolating us. And then his silence, the papal silence in the face of FBI investigations and infiltrations, gave consent to the Gestapo to do the rest.
What's the difference between a traditional Catholic and a radical traditional Catholic? Well, your FBI wrote a memo talking about radical traditional Catholics. I'm just wondering if you could define it for us. Let me just read from page 4. Provide new opportunities to mitigate extremist threat through outreach to traditional Catholic parishes and the development of sources with the placement and access to report on places of worship. That's pretty fancy language for they're trying to put informants in the parish, in the church. That's what this memorandum said.
So, friends, I hope you begin to see that this is a war on authentic Catholicism, right? This is what I mean. Whether you're a Latin Mass Catholic or not, this is a war against all of us, right? And the mainstream press now, they know this. They're following this. This is why the Associated Press is all in when it comes to Diane Montagna's bombshell report. Quote, the debate in the Catholic Church over the celebration of the Old Latin Mass is heating up, writes the Associated Press's Nicole Winfield. Just as Pope Leo XIV's pontificate is getting underway, with the apparent leak of Vatican documents that undermine a stated reason of his predecessor, Pope Francis, for restricting access to the ancient liturgy. The documents suggest that the majority of Catholic bishops who responded to a 2020 Vatican survey about the Latin Mass had expressed general satisfaction with it and warned that restricting the Latin Mass would do more harm than good. In other words, somebody lied, and that lie found its way all the way to the top. She continues, quote, Pope Francis said he was cracking down on the spread of the old liturgy because that Mass is a source of division in the Church. Francis said he was responding to the wishes expressed by bishops around the world who had responded to the Vatican survey. And Nicole Winfield quotes Francis himself as saying, the responses to the survey reveal a situation that preoccupies and saddens me and persuades me of the need to intervene. Oh, please. The Vatican's crackdown on the Latin Mass is now and always was based on ideology and fake news, two of the things that Francis spent a lot of time condemning and getting outraged about. Getting quite exercised about ideology, ideologues, right? And fake news. That's exactly what Traditionis Custodes is.